My grandmother has some pretty incredible stories. She has always lived on a ranch-type property and kept chickens, goats, sheep, and all to sell and produce for her own consumption. She would tell us about how sometimes she would wake up and find one of her sheep or goats dead. They had been killed. Not taken, but actually killed. And not mauled and eaten, like you might expect from a coyote or even a wolf. Their body, the strangest thing, would be perfect, except for puncture wounds on their neck, and their bodies would be bone dry, like a husk, because they were completely drained of all blood. For a long time, she wondered and pondered what on earth could do such a thing. There was never any commotion in the night. She wasn't woken at 3 a.m. by chickens squawking or goats and sheep making a ruckus. Whatever was doing this seemed to be using the utmost stealth. That's the most scary part. She did attempt staying up a few times to see if the culprit would appear. But as if it knew it was being watched, nothing ever happened when she was on her guard. She did employ a local boy to hide and keep watch a couple of times. But again, it was as if whatever was doing it knew somehow that it was a trap and did not come when it had a captive audience, so to speak. Finally, one night, the boy comes running in, looking terrified, and Grandma, a while to calm him down, was able to tell her what happened. He told her that he had seen this animal or creature killing the animals, that somehow she must be cursed, because this creature was not of this earth. The boy had been hiding in the dark and nearly given up for the night when he heard a strange rustling from where the sheep were sleeping. Quietly, he crept further along in the shadows so he couldn't be seen but was closer. They were all resting, or so it appeared. Not one of them seemed to notice or be worried by any noise. Then, the boy apparently saw something he would never forget. His description is that the size was around 5 feet tall, and despite the gorging on the blood, was deathly skinny, gaunt even. Apparently it walked on 2 feet, was hunched over, and could clearly see a row of long, thin spines upon its back. Completely hairless, similar to that of a naked mole rat, I guess. Its skin looked like it had some sort of disease or mange. The head was dog-like, but also human-like. Huge, large oval black eyes, and a mouth full of sharp teeth. It used those sharp teeth to apparently bite into the neck of these sheep. The boy was paralyzed in fear, able to hear it gulping and pulling out the blood of these animals. Once it had finished, it left the bone-dry corpse and fled. Only then was the boy able to run back to the house to tell what he had seen. They were never sure exactly what the creature had been that he talked about, and the boy refused to ever step foot on that property again, no matter how much my grandmother offered to pay him. But for some reason, after that night, the creature did not return. The only possible explanation she could offer was that it knew that it had been spotted. It knew now that they knew about it, and so apparently it moved on to another ranch or farm or someplace it could eat freely. If it really was some not-of-this-world beast, it would sort of make sense that once it had been seen, it lost some of that power. But who truly knows? My grandmother's now long passed, but this was a tale she told me that terrified me anytime she talked about it. The boy she hired was a young 15-year-old farm boy from nearby. He had known my grandmother for quite some time. She had expressed to me just how much trust she had in him. So, unless he is making it up, then my grandmother is wrong. But judging from my grandmother recalling the event and how she explained how terrified this boy was, I seriously doubt this was some elaborate prank or hoax. Creepy. One day, I was out taking a walk, And by taking a walk, I mean hiking through the desert, as I live in New Mexico. I had just started off this new fitness program after a buddy had taken us all by surprise after having a thankfully non-fatal heart attack. It just sort of gave me that you need to get off your butt and get your heart of yours fitter kind of nudge. So, there I was, in the stifling heat, telling myself that this was good for me. I'm not an idiot with a death wish. Quite the opposite, actually. It was very early in the morning, so the sun was still rising, and the heat was stifling, yet nowhere near as intense as it would be later. The area in which I was walking through was a proper trail, but was very rocky, and it wasn't unusual to come upon the odd goat or other harmless creature. There were always coyotes around too, but usually they leave people alone. When I stumbled upon a dead goat, just lying in the path, it wasn't the biggest shock. There were some pretty steep rocks and hills, and I guess one could easily fall down and injure itself. But if you know anything about goats, well, they're not exactly clumsy creatures when it comes to climbing. It did look an odd color though, that might not make a lot of sense. It looked more pale than usual, and also really stiff, obviously since it was dead, just like you might expect a body to be. But I noticed it was completely undamaged. No sign of any broken legs or neck, and no blood from any wound. In fact, upon first glance, it appeared as if it would just drop dead. I don't know why that bothered me so much. So I took a closer look, curious as to how this goat supposedly died. And there, hidden away, I had to really look for it, appeared to be small holes on its neck, and drained of blood. My first thought were vampires, but vampires don't exist, and they only pull the blood out of humans. So how did I explain these two puncture holes on its neck? I actually remember thinking and looking over my shoulder, expecting to see some dude in a cape turning into a bat and flying off. Ridiculous, I know. But when you're in the moment, how do you explain that? I did catch a glimpse of something, though, up on the rocky hill, that appeared to be watching me. I'm not sure I've ever been so scared. As soon as I realized this thing was watching me, this fear came over me. Did I really think it was Count Dracula? No, because it wasn't, nor did it look like it. But it was something that wasn't human nor animal. The only way I can describe it was that it looked like some kind of upright, hairless dog. It was really skinny, and looked to be not having a decent meal in a long time. When I first saw it, it looked more animal-like, but then the more it began moving, its movements didn't look anything an animal would make. Again, standing up on two legs, just like a person. I could also see more clearly that it had very large black eyes, and apparently large spines from its shoulders and back. I'm no expert on animals or dogs, but I'm pretty sure that there is no natural occurring animal to have those kind of spikes out of its skin. I didn't know what to think. I left it there on the hill, this dog who thought he was a person with his spiny, spiky back. What on earth was I looking at? I ran the hell out of there, not trying to worry about too much of who and what and when. I'll figure that out later. I'm just glad this thing made no attempt to follow me. Who knows what that would have turned out to be. To give you some information, we live in Texas, and chupacabras here are common knowledge around these areas. We are as wary of them as regular predators like coyotes and wolves, and whatever else lives around here. Now, even though I consider them predators, I don't believe we actually have wolves in the state, but coyotes, yes, and mountain lions in certain areas, yes. You can usually tell the difference, too, in a killing. Coyotes and other predators tend to make hell of a mess, eating most of the cadaver, or dragging it away, or leaving part of the hide behind. You wake up to one of these killings, and you got bits of blood and animal carcass all over. But if the chupacabra has been to visit, you'll find dead livestock with virtually no mess. If you were to ask me which one of those predators I would rather face on a dark night alone, with or without a weapon, I'd say give me anything over a chupacabra. A bear, a puma, I'd rather face that. I know I can shoot and kill one of those critters. The blood-sucking fiend, though, I believe it's something not of this world, a demon. And, thankfully, it wasn't on our land, but I saw one once, and I very much know they're real. I am, unfortunately, aware of their existence. We had decided to get rid of the remaining goats and chickens we had. My mother was far too upset when she kept finding them dead, drained of blood. They never kicked up a fuss to alert us. They would make a racket, warning each other, calling for help if a coyote was nearby. But we always knew when we had been visited by this creature. When I finally saw one, I was actually taking the dog for a walk. That was one animal I insisted that we keep, although we always kept him inside at nighttime. He is quite a lively one, abounds of energy, and often needs long walks where he runs about for ages, making me tired. This day, though, he had been darting in and out of the trees suspiciously, sniffing at everything, as if we didn't come to the same woods every single day. He is a very happy dog, but in a friendly look at me, I've only ever seen him growl a couple of times, and he was either hurt or trying to protect me. So, when I saw him go rigid, ears down, teeth bared, low growl, tail between his legs, I knew he had seen something that terrified him and made him think I needed protection. He began barking furiously, and then almost instantaneously changed from an angry bark to a petrified whine, came running over to me and hid. I was of course concerned at what on earth could cause my big, brave boy to act like this, but also curious, since every single chupacabra story or sighting I've ever heard about locally was in the night. That never crossed my mind. I was walking slowly over to where the dog had been, and I got the shock of my life. Standing way behind the trees, not close enough to be an immediate threat, but near enough to cause concern and for me to get a good look at it. The best way I can describe it to you, it was shorter than me, but around the size of my mother, so maybe 5 foot. It stood upright, just like me. There was no mistaking it. I have heard people say or report that it reminds them of a rabid dog. I would say there were canine similarities. Its body was completely devoid of any hair, and it looked to have rough, saggy skin. Very mangy looking too. Either that or it had some sort of skin disease. It was ugly. Long gangly limbs, and even appeared to have claws that it dragged behind it, as if it had arms and hands too long and big for its body that it had to drag behind it. Very weird. It had sharp-looking spikes coming from around its shoulders and its back, and even had large fangs protruding from its mouth, as if they were fake teeth put in that were too big for its own mouth. This thing was freaky looking, as well as ugly. The head, well, I don't know if you've ever seen the show American Dad, where there's an alien character named Roger. Well, even though it's just a cartoon, this alien Roger has a very large alien head. Well, the head was kind of like that. Very bulbous and oversized for its body. Gray, too. That's immediately what I thought of when I saw this thing's head. Except the face was entirely different. Large, and I mean large black eyes. Not beady in any way. I couldn't make out any nose, but again, the sharp teeth. It just stood staring at me. It might sound overdramatic, but I truly felt that if I stayed there, it would attack us. The air around me just felt wrong. It was almost like a haze or a static electricity in the air. I wasn't sticking around to find out. And thankfully, my dog didn't need any persuasion. Since then, though, I have not seen it around, thankfully, and I hope it never comes back.